Rocky Top Insider instant reaction to Tennessee baseball's win over LSU here in the SEC Tournament Championship. The Vols are the 2024 SEC Tournament champions. That makes 2 of the past 3 years in which Tennessee has won this tournament in Hoover. And of course, similar to 2022, Tennessee also was at least a part of or at least shared the regular season crown as well. So, a dominant season from Tennessee caps off an SEC play with an SEC Tournament Championship victory in Hoover. Ryan, we talked about coming into this game that Tennessee, the pitching wasn't deep at all coming into today. Well, Dylan Loy shoved in 4 2/3, career outing for the freshman lefty, and he carried Tennessee to this win today.
Yeah, and Tony Vitello said it yesterday. He said we need to see some guys to take a look at what Andrew Binky did against Mississippi State on Friday night and take a look at what Marcus Phillips did on Saturday night against Vanderbilt. And we need them to say, hey, I can do that too. And Dylan Loy did that and more in what was just a phenomenal performance from the freshman left-hander. And I mean, not only to pitch whatever, it ended up being a 4 2/3. Let's see, 4 2/3 scoreless, like that on its own, incredibly impressive. But he didn't really have to stress that much. I mean, he allowed 2 hits, he allowed 2 walks. One of those walks was an intentional walk. To Jared Jones with a runner on second and 2 outs in the third inning. I think after that, he retired the next 7 batters. I think 10 of the next 11 batters. Like he was dominant. It wasn't maybe just overpowering stuff, but he coasted in this one, and it felt like I think the most pitches he'd thrown all season was 50 going into this game. Through 78 today. It felt like if he had been worked up to 75, there was nothing that made you think he couldn't go for another 2 innings and be, just keep cruising right along.
Yeah, and I think there were questions about Tennessee's pitching depth certainly entering this week, and those questions came to front even more with Tennessee's performance against Vanderbilt on Wednesday, given the fact that the midweek approach didn't work at all and they got teed off on. Well, as the week progressed, you get a great inning from Andrew Binky in one of these games. You get a great relief performance from Marcus Phillips, that 3 inning relief performance against Vanderbilt on Saturday night. And then today, with A.J. Russell being used as an opener and then Dylan Loy shoving like this, I honestly think that by the end of the week, you have to feel better about Tennessee's pitching depth, given what these guys showed after that first day here in Hoover.
Yeah, no doubt. Like, it felt like we came into this week with a lot of questions about the pitching depth, expedited in unbelievable fashion by that first game. I mean, no one could work a clean inning. And then over the last couple of days, it just feels like you slowly checked more and more boxes. Andrew Binky wasn't very good today. He came in and walked 2 batters on, I think it was a total of 9 pitches. And Tony said they didn't really want to use him because of how much he had to leave out there the other night. But it's those 3 guys and A.J. Russell were the 4 you wanted to see stuff from this week. And it felt like all of them had their moments, especially the young guys. I mean, for Russell, it's more of a health thing and a getting back into gear stuff. We know the talent's there. But for Phillips, Binky, and Loy, it's about, can they handle a moment? And I don't think you leave this weekend feeling like, oh, man, these guys they're infallible. They're Nate Snead or Aaron Combs. But you feel like if they have to pitch an inning, if they have to pitch 2 innings for you, it might not go Tennessee's way, but there's a chance that it could. And it certainly helps a lot in how they've all pitched in some high leverage moments here in Hoover this week. And if they are called upon in the NCAA tournament, it won't be the first time in a big spot.
We also have to shout out Kirby Cannell for coming in, relieving Binky after he struggled, as Ryan said, only throwing 9 pitches and walking 2 batters. Kirby Cannell comes in, goes 2 2/3, does give up a run, and it was something that, was inherited because when he left, there was a man on base who eventually scored, Hayden Travinski. But Kirby Cannell pitched 4 times this week in Hoover and was very, very big in Tennessee's path to winning Hoover. He was very crucial to what Tennessee was able to do this week.
Yeah, I thought Tony Vitello made a pretty good case for him to be SEC tournament MVP because, not one Tennessee hitter just had a massive week here this week. A number of guys had good weeks, but no one was just fantastic. And, the pitching aspect's always hard because, like Tennessee, for most of these best teams, their best guys are only throwing 1 game. So it's kind of like who do you choose? But yeah, Kirby threw 4 different games this week. And it felt like he was kind of that glue guy or the bridge for Tennessee where, you felt like they had something pretty good maybe at the start and they had something that could maybe help him out at the end. But it's like, how are they going to get to the middle? It felt like Kirby was that guy. So he was really good this week, really effective. And then, if he comes in, that first out he gets, I thought was not his own doing, but maybe to play at a game. LSU has the bases loaded, Tennessee up 3-1. Cal Stark, throws it behind Stephen Milam. I'm
Yeah,
not sure how to pronounce his name.
Milan.
At first base, and they get that back pick. I mean, that felt like one of, if not the biggest play of the game, and obviously that just saving Kirby from having to throw a few pitches there, probably had a minor significance on top of the major significance of getting out of the inning.
Yeah, Cal Stark just continues to be lights out defensively. We know how good he is, but in that moment, with the bases loaded, as you said, and being able to get Tennessee out of that jam, as great as the pitching was these past couple of days, and as much as we've talked about how great the pitching was, Cal Stark is just as important probably to be able to do something like that in a big moment to single-handedly get Tennessee out of a jam. I mean, Blake Burke is part of the play too, but the defense from Cal Stark just continues to be a super great thing for Tennessee.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote about it this week, so go check it out and feature it on Cal Stark. But the back picks have been a key this thing for him this season. But we talked to Dylan Loy, obviously, probably the first time we talked to Dylan Loy this season. Maybe we talked to him after a midweek. I actually think we did talk to him after a midweek. But he talked about it, and he was like, what was the key for your success? And he was like, just the calmness that Cal brought me, and it's just something that all these Tennessee pitchers have talked about when I've asked him about it for that story. Is just his presence, the way he leads from behind the plate, the way he can kind of alter his personality and his approach to different guys, and how that's been key to their success. And one thing that Josh Elander told me for the story is one of the big reasons why Cal Stark won Tennessee starting catcher job last season was that Chase Dollander and other guys were like, I want to pitch to Cal. He's the guy I feel best with. And that's something I think you can, to the naked eye, it's even to myself. I'm not going to act like I'm some sort of catching expert or pitching expert. You don't notice that stuff. But that's something that Cal does really, really well on top of, like you said, controlling runners on the base pass and kind of being pretty lights out defensively this season.
When you look at this tournament as a whole, this is a big point I want to bring up about this week. And you look at Tennessee's totals of their wins: 7-4 against A&M, 6-5 against State, 6-4 against Vanderbilt, 4-3 against LSU, which had an over/under of 14 runs, by the way, and it was half that today with 7 total runs scored in the championship game. But when you look at the fact that Tennessee's offense was not what carried them to a tournament championship in a setting to where pitching is at a premium, and Tennessee's offense has been the main thing about that team all year, the best in the country. So when you think about the fact that Tennessee was able to play 5 games in Hoover and win the SEC tournament, and the most runs they scored in a game was 7, it's pretty shocking and also really encouraging going into the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, it is. And I asked Tony Vitello about the growth of the pitching staff, and he just talked a lot about Frank Anderson and how good he is. But it's crazy the way this staff has grown. I mean, if you go back to the 5th SEC series of the year, if my memory is correct, is Auburn. Tennessee loses that opener, giving up 10 plus runs, and it felt like this team is just not going to have the pitch. As good as this offense is, man, this team just might not have the pitching to make it back to Omaha. And here, lo and behold, another year of Frank Anderson, and Tennessee's team ERA is number 2 nationally. Once again, back in the top 10, as it seems to be every single year. And then they just had more and more guys step up. The guys that have been at the top have gotten better over the course of the season. This isn't something I've said on our podcast a handful of times, but they've changed the narrative from, is Tennessee's pitching good enough to make it to Omaha to is Tennessee's pitching good enough to win a national championship? And what they showed this week, especially with some of those guys we talked about earlier, it feels more and more plausible that, it may be good enough for Tennessee to win a national championship.
Yeah, and they didn't even, extend Beam or Kazi as much as they could have. Heck, even Xander, only throwing 80 pitches probably could have given you more. And Snead could have pitched today. Stamos could have pitched today. So they didn't extend anybody. And, they were really smart about making sure they didn't do that, as next weekend is a lot more important than this weekend. And they still were able to win the thing against some pretty hot teams. Of course, Vanderbilt and LSU hadn't lost in Hoover when Tennessee beat each of those teams these past 2 nights. So a really great week for Tennessee. And, I think both of us, if you told us Wednesday night after that 13-4 loss to Vanderbilt that Tennessee was going to win this thing, we'd be like, you're crazy. but Tennessee's able to do it, and I think they showed why they're the number one team in the country.
Yeah, I mean, if you asked me on Wednesday night or Thursday morning what I'd be doing at 8:25 Eastern time on Sunday, I'd say probably wrapping up my golf round, getting back home and prepping some stuff for tomorrow. So yeah, not a miraculous run, but an impressive run and a surprising run. And you know, you see a lot doing our jobs, and not it's kind of hard a lot of times for someone to surprise you, especially in a sport like baseball. But I was definitely surprised the way Tennessee, after they lost on Tuesday, and the way they lost, and how it was clear they were going to be conservative with the pitching, and a lot of those guys not looking good on Wednesday. Definitely surprising the way Tennessee responded, and it's to the point you just said. It's because of they didn't push those main arms. It's the guys that stepped up, and the pitching is what carried them this weekend. And to what I think you were kind of leading me into talking about with Tennessee, yeah, they're going to be number one overall seed in the NCAA tournament. I guess in a couple of minutes here, we'll figure out, that the NCAA will confirm that Tennessee Knoxville is a regional host, and then tomorrow we'll probably figure out Tennessee's number one overall seed. And it felt like it was pretty close between Tennessee and Kentucky when you look at the resumes going into this week. Kentucky, a relatively short stay here, and Tennessee winning the title. I think there's kind of no doubt that the Vols will be the number one overall seed for the second time in 3 years.
1-2 for the Cats in Hoover, 4-1 for the Vols, so they got 3 wins on them. Yeah, I think everyone would be pretty surprised. Tennessee is not the number one overall seed. We'll get into this more about being the 1 seed and kind of everything that goes into that when we preview the regional this week. That's something we'll hit on a lot. I do just want to do some last minute recaps of Hoover. Couple of awards notes. Blake Burke wins SEC tournament MVP. Also makes the All SEC tournament team. Of course, Kavaris Tears does as well. Blake Burke, kind of a quiet MVP. Christian Moore had a big homer that was, loud and 441 feet, but Blake Burke just was super consistent at the plate this week, and it was kind of shades of mid-season Burke and SEC play where he was just really consistent, maybe not hitting homer after homer, but one of the better bats in Tennessee's lineup, and he gets the MVP award to take home.
Yeah, no doubt. It did in a lot of ways feel quiet, and he was just consistent with his approach and got on base a ton. But then he did have the big swing to go with it. I mean, Tennessee and Mississippi State are tied in the 8th inning or 7th inning when he hits the go-ahead home run the other night. So, that was kind of the big explanation point on what was a really good week for him. And now it's been a really good 2 weeks for him. I think it's a good sign for Tennessee. Is not that he was terrible or anything, because that's not true, but he had a stretch there for, 2 or 3 weekends that he was just pretty good, or he was just solid at the plate. I think maybe one of those weekends he was actually pretty bad, but besides that, he's been fantastic all season, and he was fantastic this week again for Tennessee.
It's been a heck of a week here in Hoover. Ryan, before we wrap up, do you have any other notes about Tennessee, winning their second SEC tournament in 3 years?
No, I don't think I do. I think we've kind of hit on all of it. Besides just what a 3-year run, really 4-year run it's been for Tennessee. They've won 4 of the last 6 SEC championships that they give out. Tennessee has won, and now as they start the NCAA tournament, they'll look to make it back to Omaha for the 3rd time in 4 years, and see if once they get there, they'll have bigger ambitions and aspirations than what they've achieved the past 2 trips.
If you're curious, last SEC baseball team to appear in 3 SEC tournament championship games in a 4-year span is Florida from 2014 to 2016. And then with a win today, the Vols are the first SEC team to win 2 SEC tournament titles in a 3-year span since LSU went back-to-back 10 years ago, 2013 and 2014. So, Tennessee firmly at the top of the SEC this decade. We kind of talked about that a couple of days ago. And this win today further proves that notion. But you can follow Ryan at rshump00 on all social media. I'm at Jack Foster Media. And you can follow Rocky Top Insider at Rocky Top Insider on all social media platforms. And follow along with all UT coverage at RockyTopInsider.com. We'll have plenty of coverage from Tennessee's SEC tournament win here in Hoover. But for Ryan, I'm Jack. See you next time.